I'll be reading the first part of The Christmas Miracle of Jonathan Toomey by Susan Wojciechowski. It's illustrated by P.J. Lynch, and the illustrations are fantastic. The Christmas Miracle of Jonathan Toomey. The village children called him Mr. Gloomy. But in fact, his name was Toomey, Mr. Jonathan Toomey. And although it's not kind to call people names, this one fit quite well. For Jonathan Toomey seldom smiled and never laughed. He went about mumbling and grumbling, muttering and sputtering, grumping and griping. He complained that the church bells rang too loudly, that the birds sang too much, and that the children played too loudly. Mr. Toomey was a wood carver. Some said he was the best wood carver in the whole valley. He spent his days sitting at a workbench, carving beautiful shapes from blocks of pine and hickory and chestnut wood. After supper, he sat in a straight-backed chair near the fireplace, smoking his pipe and staring into the flames. Jonathan Toomey wasn't an old man, but if you saw him, you might think he was, the way he walked bent forward with his head down. You wouldn't notice his eyes, the clear blue of an August sky. And you wouldn't see the dimples on his chin, since his face was mostly hidden under a shaggy, untrimmed beard, speckled with sawdust and wood shavings, and, depending on what he ate that day, with crumbs of bread or a bit of potato or dried gravy. The village people didn't know it, but there was a reason for his gloom, a reason for his grumbling, a reason why he walked hunched over, as if carrying a great weight on his shoulders. Some years earlier, when Jonathan Toomey was young and full of life and full of love, his wife and baby had become very sick. And because those were the days before hospitals and medicines and skilled doctors, his wife and baby died 3 days apart from each other. So Jonathan Toomey had packed his belongings into a wagon and traveled till his tears stopped. He settled into a tiny house at the edge of a village to do his wood carving. One day, in early December, there was a knock at Jonathan's door. Mumbling and grumbling, he went to answer it. There stood a woman and a young boy. "I'm the widow McDowell. I'm new in your village. This is my son Thomas," the woman said. "I'm 7 and I know how to whistle," said Thomas. "Whistling is pish-posh," said the woodcarver gruffly. "I need something carved," said the woman, and she told Jonathan about a very special set of Christmas figures her grandfather had carved for her when she was a girl. "After I moved here, I discovered that they were lost," she explained. "I had hoped that by some miracle I would find them again, but it hasn't happened." "There are no such things as miracles," the woodcarver told her. "Now, could you describe the figures for me?" "There were sheep," she told him. "2 of them with curly wool," added Thomas. "Yes, 2, said the widow. "And a cow, an angel, Mary, Joseph, the baby Jesus, and the wise men." "3 of them," added Thomas. "Will you take the job?" asked Widow Dowell. "I will." "I'm grateful. How soon can you have them ready?" "They'll be ready when they are ready," he said. "But I must have them by Christmas. They mean very much to me. I can't remember a Christmas without them." "Christmas is pish-posh," said Jonathan gruffly, and he shut the door. following week, there was a knock at the woodcarver's door. Muttering and sputtering, he went to answer it. There stood the widow McDowell and Thomas. "Excuse me," said the widow, "but Thomas has been begging to come and watch you work. He says he wants to be a woodcarver when he grows up and would like to watch you since you are the best in the valley." "I'll be quiet. You won't even know I'm here. Please, please," piped in Thomas. With a grumble, the woodcarver stepped aside to let them in. He pointed to a stool near his workbench. "No talking, no jiggling, no noise," he ordered Thomas. The widow McDowell handed Mr. Toomey a warm loaf of cornbread as a token of thanks. Then she took out her knitting and sat down in a rocking chair in the far corner of the cottage. "Not there!" bellowed the woodcarver. "No one sits in that chair." So she moved to the straight-back chair by the fire. Thomas sat very still. Once when he needed to sneeze, he pressed a finger under his nose to hold it back. Once when he wanted desperately to scratch his leg, he counted to 20 to keep his mind off the itch. After a very long time, Thomas cleared his throat and whispered, "Mr. Toomey, may I ask a question?" The woodcarver glared at Thomas, then shrugged his shoulders and grunted. Thomas decided it meant yes, so he went on. "Is that my sheep you're carving?" The woodcarver nodded and grunted again. After another very long time, Thomas whispered, "Mr. Toomey, excuse me, but you're carving my sheep wrong." The widow McDowell's knitting needles stopped clicking. Jonathan Toomey's knife stopped carving. Thomas went on. "It's a beautiful sheep, nice and curly, but my sheep looked happy." "That's pish-posh," said Mr. Toomey. "Sheep are sheep. They cannot look happy." "Mine did," answered Thomas. "They knew they were with the baby Jesus, so they were happy." After that, Thomas was quiet for the rest of the afternoon. When the church bells chimed 6 o'clock, Mr. Toomey grumbled under his breath about the awful noise. The widow McDowell said it was time to leave. Thomas sneezed 3 times, then thanked the woodcarver for allowing him to watch. That evening, after supper cornbread and boiled potatoes, the woodcarver sat down on his bench. He picked up his knife. He picked up the sheep. He worked until his eyelids drooped shut. A few days later, there was a knock at the woodcarver's door. Griping and grumbling, he went to answer it. There stood the widow and her son. "May I watch again?" "I will be quiet," said Thomas. He settled himself on the stool very quietly, while his mother laid a basket of sweet-smelling raisin buns on the table. "Teapot is warm," Mr. Toomey said gruffly, his head bent over his work. While Mr. Toomey carved, the widow McDowell poured tea. She touched the woodcarver gently on the shoulder and placed a cup of tea and a bun next to him. He pretended not to notice, but soon both the plate and the cup were empty. Thomas tried to eat the bun his mother had given him as quietly as he could. But it is almost impossible to be 7 and eat a warm, sticky raisin bun without making various smacking, licking, satisfied noises. When Thomas had finished, he tried to sit quietly. Once he almost hiccuped, but he took a deep breath and held it till his face turned red. And once, without thinking, he began to swing his legs, but a glare from the woodcarver stopped him, and he kept them so still they fell asleep. A few days later, there was a knock on the woodcarver's door. He smoothed down his hair as he went to answer it. At the door was the widow and her son. "May I watch again?" asked Thomas. As Mrs. McDowell warmed the tea and put a plate of fresh molasses cookies on the workbench, Thomas watched the woodcarver work on the figure of an angel. After a very long time, Thomas spoke. "Mr. Toomey, excuse me, is that my angel you're carving?" "Yes." And will you do me the favor of telling me exactly what I'm doing wrong? Will my angel look like one of God's most important angels because it was sent to the baby Jesus? And just how does one make an angel look important? Asked the woodcarver. You'll be able to do it, said Thomas. You are the best woodcarver in the family. That's the first part of the Christmas miracle of Jonathan Toomey, and we'll read the next tomorrow.